Broadcasting Radio Network, and Hard Copy seeks to lay out the facts in simple fashion for the inclusion of all Bahamians and Bahamians of the heart. The focus every day to move forthright in our manner to build a progressive and developing country. Our desire is for a Bahamas with a competent, skillful, and productive workforce. We want a country that can feed and sustain itself. We want a country with a brilliant visionary action plan ready to embrace a future of hope and prosperity. We encourage like-minded Bahamians just like you to participate with intelligent and honest contributions. After all, we have a country to build. We've got jobs and industry to create, a people to inspire and empower, and generations of born and unborn Bahamians we the people must protect and plan for. And if not you, then who? If not now, then when? Today on Hard Copy, an act of irresponsibility, or is it racial hypocrisy? We're going to talk about that statement today that we didn't get a chance to talk about. That thing about Bahamians breed too much, we're talking about it. And also, we want your calls about it. Today, right here on Hard Copy, in just a minute.
Everyone's heading to the new Show Bistro, Nassau Street.
That's how you saw that.
Daily specials, including the show.
for joining us on the drive home. I'm Steve McKinney. This is Hard Copy. And we're brought to you today by the People's Movement, the TPM. Also, Mount Tabor Inspiration, Ministry of Tourism, Cacique Awards, Haji's, your everything store, Majority Rule 50th year celebrations, Commonwealth Bank, the new debit card, Rocky Farms Nursery, Seabreeze Lane, the PLP Empowerment Convention, the Vanius Spices and Manufacturing Limited, Cool Tech, the Air Can Do experts on Tonique Williams Darling Highway. We're also brought to you by Bahamian Brewery and Beverages, Kalina Insurance for comprehensive coverage, Super Wash, open 24/7, Bank of the Bahamas, the Bank of Solution, Super Value, all Bahamian supermarkets, the Shoal Bistro on Nassau Street, and Manager Shores and Broker, 61 Collins Avenue. Ron's Electric Motors, Clarendon Wolf Road, Executive Printers on Jerome Avenue, McKinney Media Group for the best results in advertisements, and the Voice of Deliverance. That's a revival that's going to happen later on tonight. Call us today on Hard Copy 325-0235 or 6. WhatsApp and texting 376-9234. YouTube, you can see us there. World Wide Web, peace1075.com. The cable top box 970. Tune in radio, iPad, iPhone, any Android. You can also follow us on Facebook, Hard Copy, and on Twitter, Hard Copy Bahamas. Boy, what a weekend we had, right? Lots of things are happening, and certainly there's a big backup as far as all the different topical events that we're supposed to be taking a look at. And the PLP's convention that's coming up this week has certainly created this backup of all the different guests and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get through it, because today on this Monday, a breezy day in the country, we've got a good little conversation for you to really get an interest in, and let us be realistic about what is going on here. We are going to be talking today with one who has been a scholar for some time and has his own ministry and all that. His name, of course, Pastor Cedric Moss, and he has been at the forefront of so many things, at the forefront of this whole matter about gatekeeping. He is one of the original founders of gatekeepers, people who in fact keep the gate, the moral conscience of the Bahamas. So it's not surprising that he would look at the newspapers and watch events that are happening in our country to make commentary on it. And one such event happened just recently when there was the Majority Rule celebrations, and a local pastor who is actually Archdeacon James Palacios had made some comments. And everybody's been talking about it. Everyone has been talking about these comments. No one really substantively dealt with it from a point of view as to us, the people, we the people, understanding really the context in which he said it, and if it was offensive, if it was something that he really should not have said, or if it's something that he regrets and has taken back. But it happened. I watched the program on the replay of a broadcast just over the weekend, and when I saw it, I say, wow, he said it it happened just in like a spur of the moment kind of thing. And so a lot of people may have missed this whole thing. But what did he say? You remember the story. This comment from Archdeacon James Palacios that provoked some people and angered some people, and actually spurred on some people that, yes, he's right on. He said, black people breathe too much. This is just part of his comment, because he was making a comment about a lot of things that are happening in our country that really shouldn't be. And somebody has to do caretaking of it and speak truth to power about these things. But like everything else, we heard that, we zeroed in on that particular part of it. And some people say, well, that's that, I'm not worried about it, because that's what he said. But then just a couple of weeks before, one Richard Lightburn had said some things just along those lines. He talked about doing some things because he saw that as a means of trying to cut back on poverty in this country, and figured that we have to take control of what is happening in our country as far as the amount of childbirths in our country is concerned. I say all that against this backdrop that, we have one of the lowest rates of childbirth per capita in the world, the Bahamas does. In fact, some would argue that, man, we don't have children like we supposed to be having children. Then others would argue that, what, are you crazy? All these children we got all about with no daddy and so forth and so on. So it's a real issue. It's not so much to zero in on Palacios' comments from the point of view of he shouldn't have said that or he should have said it. it just provokes the thought that, boy, we have some real issues in our country. And I don't know when we are going to begin the process of deflecting from the politics and concentrating on those things that are very much important to our growth and development and to our standard of living and to the prevention of crime, because all these things, my friends, lead to crime, destruction, poverty, and all of these things, desperation, and people who are in real need. And so today we have on the show at this first hour, our friend, Pastor Cedric Moss, who in fact has been at the forefront of these things and many issues. He was at the forefront of this gender equality referendum. And you can say one of those persons who in fact led the whole protest of the no vote, in that we should just concentrate on doing the right things for our people in this country. And I invite him here to the show today. Good afternoon, Pastor Cedric Moss. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Steve. I'm doing well, thank you.
It's good to see you. Now, I know that this could be a very, very hot button subject but you took time out. I must commend you. You took time out, even though that statement was made, you took time out to make some comparisons to the statement that was made by Archdeacon Palacios, who is a respected man in this country and who is a likable person because he's one of the good fellows who mean well. We know this. And I'm sure that everyone knows that. The point, though, he said something that bordered on a kind of touchy, very touchy subject that no one likes to deal about, no one likes to deal with. And as a result of that, it touched off a little bit of debate in some quarters, but a lot of people was practicing something that you referred to as perhaps a case of racial hypocrisy. And that is because one white man by the name of Richard Lightburn said something at a pre-national convention some months earlier, and he was ridiculed, excoriated, and everything else for his statements. And then Archdeacon Palacios, a black man who is a leading citizen, just like Richard Lightburn is, said basically something that was more of a derogatory version, but that's his Bahamianization. That's his Bahamian dialect. Not Bahamianization. That's his Bahamian way of saying they breathe too much. We heard that term over and over. Some people became offended by that. Others agreed with him. A lot of people agreed with him. You looked at it and say, how come we can, on one hand, excoriate Richard Lightburn, a white Bahamian, who said it? And some people say, yes, he had no right saying it because he's a white Bahamian. They'll tell you that bold like that. And then, on the other hand, we have this statement being made in a more derogatory sense. At least the statement earlier by Richard Lightburn seemed to have tried to border on being genuine and diplomatic and, that kind of thing. But this statement was just, right up. We breathe too much, that kind of thing. Bahamian people breathe too much. Black people, not Bahamian people, but black people breathe too much, to quote him correctly. How do you look at that from a point of view of educating the Bahamian public as to what that entails, what that means? What should that mean for us, we the people who have been in charge of this country the last 50 years? What does that mean? How should we see that? How should we view that? From a moral point of view, from a social point of view, from an economic impact point of view, how should we view those statements? And should we make any big deal out of it or accept what has been said and try to work with fixing this problem that is very vexing?
Well, Steve, I was very careful to try to look at exactly what Richard Lightburn said and also what Archdeacon Palacios said. And I think by any fair comparison, what Archdeacon Palacios said is offensive and inappropriate, whereas what Richard Lightburn said is perfectly fine. Now, let me say this. Yesterday, I was in a conversation with a family member, and she was very troubled, and she was upset, and she was saying Richard Lightburn had no right to say what he said.
Understood.
And I said to her, do you know what he said? Did you hear what he said?
And more than likely she didn't.
And no, she didn't. She was hearing it secondhand. I read to her what Richard Lightburn said, and she said to me, that's what he said? I said, yeah. She said, I agree with that.
Interesting.
She agreed with it.
Mhm.
And I think that's the case with many people. Many people are going second and third hand about what Richard Light once said. And they are taking offense because I just read in one of the newspapers of record,
Mhm.
Richard Lightwon being misquoted again to say that he said that the state should tie the tubes of women who have 2 or more children and can't take care of them if they're born out of wedlock. He didn't say that. First of all, he said we should consider this.
Mhm.
Now, what's wrong with a person saying, as a national conversation, let's consider this? We consider it, we can say yes or no.
Yeah.
And everybody knows a lawyer would not be saying you do that in a mandatory way, you force that upon people. The Constitution protects against that. There are countries that have given women incentives to tie their tubes after having so many children.
Yes.
If a state wants to do that and women want to participate in that, they're free to do that.
Mhm.
That's not offensive to me. But what Chief Palacios said, and quite frankly, as I think about it now, to me, the fact that all the pushback that he has recently gotten, that he has said nothing to adjust or to retract his comments, to me, is more stunning than what he said.
Okay.
Absolutely, more stunning.
Mhm.
I read some comments attributed to Fred Smith that were totally inappropriate.
Yes, I saw those.
Fred Smith, to his credit, has retracted those comments. And what can you say? You can't beat him anymore. You say those were inappropriate, but you're right to retract them. And that's what should be done whenever we make statements that are wrong and inappropriate.
These statements, Pastor Cedric Moss, they were made at a majority rule celebration, the kickoff of majority rule on the actual day of January the 10th. That's where these statements were made on the Southern Recreation Grounds. This is the basin where all the freedom fighters at one time or the other stood and challenged and rallied the crowd. Father Palacios, I think that's where it was. Father Palacios, I think he said what he said from a point of view of trying to get people to soberly focus on what is going on in our country. His choice of words, the way he said it in a kind of flippant Bahamian style, vernacular, I suppose, was to get the message across that, we got to do something about all these unwed mothers and these, situations where people are just having children all over the place. I think that is where he was coming from. And so when he said that black people just breathe too much, I suppose, I'm not in his mind, but what came across to me was that he was making the statement to make sure people understood that we have to be more responsible, one, and do something about it. But I want to ask you succinctly about this. Was this the right, correct forum, you believe, that this ought to have been said? Keep in mind now, there are people who are now celebrating this majority rule. It is said at that particular function. Some look at it and say, well, it's a PLP function. But no, it was a national majority rule function. And he said it. Maybe he had the right audience. Some people suggest, no, it was the wrong forum. What are your thoughts?
Steve, no forum is appropriate for that.
No forum was appropriate.
Absolutely no forum was appropriate for that. And I would say, I take great offense when a person in a position of authority demeans and puts down people who are less powerful than they are. And what he did was wrong. There were women right there, no doubt, who fit the description of what he was saying. And the situation is far more complex than that. You don't try to beat a person down and shame them into doing what you want them to do. To say you shouldn't be a baby machine, and you don't do that. You do not do that. That is wrong, and it is doubly wrong coming from someone who holds a position of authority and one who should be extending compassion and understanding to people, as opposed to this kind of indifference and this kind of I'm above you and what you're doing is just wrong.
Did you get the impression that by this time you should have heard an apology? Did you get the impression that the Bahamian people were clamoring for an apology for the statement? It happened so fast. Did you get the impression that somebody ought to have, touched his robe and say, hey, that's not where we want to go with this, and then he can fix it in the same forum?
What was your impression when the statements were made? Because there were people who were in the audience. I saw it on television. I wasn't there. But when I saw the rebroadcast, and Zelnick's played it several times since, but when I saw the rebroadcast, I looked at the people's faces and I looked at their reaction, and there were some who were like, okay, where are we going with this? That kind of thing. And then, of course, maybe something along the lines, I want to suggest to you, of this matter need to be said, but properly said. Richard Lightburn said something. He was totally, castigated for it. Father Palacios said something. It just tells me that somebody wants to give birth to a national conversation, Pastor Cedric Moss, about what we ought to be doing in rearing children and our responsibility or irresponsibility in this whole vein of creating a culture of unwed mothers and so many children without fathers, that kind of a thing.
Yes, and it's been an ongoing conversation. We've been talking about this for many years, but what I would say is, to me, more than anything else, this is a case study in racial hypocrisy.
Okay,
a case
there
study.
you go. I understand that.
There is no way that you can be fair-minded. And I remember the next morning after Richard Lightburn's comments, whole associations had prepared statements.
Oh yes,
in the
everyone,
newspaper.
everybody.
How is it for far more offensive comments, nothing is said? And that's just not right. We need to be more fair than that. We need to be more objective than that. And what is good for the goose is good for the gander.
This whole thing about what was said, the use of the word breed. Now, breed is normally, as you said in the article, I think that you wrote sometime afterward to the Nassau Guardian or Tribune, one of those newspapers. I know there was a letter to the editor. There were people who took offense to this whole word that was used. Breed. They breed too much. Now, breed is something that people normally associate with animals, cattle, with dogs, with goats, whatever you.
And
in other
slavery.
words, yeah, and with slavery, absolutely, and with slavery, and maybe it's a connotation of this whole thing about slavery anyway, because that's where we were, and that's how we were used to, make sure the stock was right and make sure we could keep the right numbers of the stock for people to work. I'm talking about, breeding people.
Yeah.
You seem to have taken great offense to that because of this derogatory language that was used. They breed too much. It sounds really, to be in comparison with some other animals that, you breed too much. What are your thoughts?
I did. I took offense to that. I also took offense to the broad brushing to say black people breed too much, which is just, even if he had used the appropriate word to say black people have too many children, if he had said that, that would have been broad brushing and wrong. But it was doubly wrong to say that they breed too much, because that is an inappropriate word to use towards the reproductive habits of people, of any people, and certainly of people of color, one of which you are.
So this is Archdeacon Palacios, a man who stands in the pulpit, who is likable, but has said some things now that has caused people to cringe and say, did he really go there? Did he really say that? And as I tell you, it seems to be mixed reaction on this, because you'd find some women who were not offended by that, and they say yes, because maybe they have not truly looked at this language that you're talking about and really dissected it to the point where we have been associated with a former time in life about slaves who were breeding and that kind of thing. And so maybe they'll say, Pastor Cedric Moss, are you making too much out of it?
And they're free to say that, but I don't think I'm making too much out of it. And I would say the larger context for my comments was the racial hypocrisy.
Yes.
That was the larger context. And I would again say that Richard Lightburn's comments were civil, Richard Lightburn's comments were thoughtful, and Richard Lightburn's comments were one that you could actually have with your children. You could talk about that and say, and he had a broader context. He talked about holding men responsible for the upkeep of their children.
But this is what should happen.
Putting legislation in place to ensure that takes place. And then, obviously, talking about some kind of a government-sponsored voluntary program where women, I understand that, for example, to get your tubes tied is very expensive. So maybe one way that a state can do that is to offer that free of charge to women who want to do that. There's nothing wrong with
And
that.
this is got to be consensual. It's not something that you're saying
It
that
can only
the
be.
state can
It can
impose
only
upon
be.
anybody.
It can only be. There's no way in the Bahamas or any democratic country you can force people to be sterilized. Now, I know in some autocratic countries, they put it in the water and they've done other things like that, but
Yes.
not in the Bahamas. I mean, that would have to be very voluntary and mutually agreed between the parties. So I just, Steve, I'm troubled by the whole thing, but I would
Yes.
say what saddens me is the glaring racial
Yes.
hypocrisy.
And I have
We
to
can get away
agree.
with stuff, but our white brothers and sisters can't get away with it. And something's wrong with that.
Yeah.
What's good for the goose should be good for the gander.
And I get that, and I say that it would take a bold, courageous person like yourself, who is a fair person, and because you talk from a moral point of view, you're simply saying to them that let's look at this, and I imagine when you look at the entire case of which you have been presenting, that is a case of racial hypocrisy. There's merit to it. One cannot deny that, hey, there's something really wrong with this. But the bigger picture is also in the context of which you wrote that maybe there's a big discussion waiting to be birthed from all of this. And I'd like to see that happen. But let me ask you further, because I want to talk a little bit more about the case of racial hypocrisy when you compare what Richard said with what James Palacios said. And at the same time, there was this quiet. There was this not a soul move. Nobody got up and say, hold a second. Nobody got up and condemned the statements. They were just chatter along the lines of general conversation, but no one really got up and condemned this position. No real women of power got up and condemned it to say that, this is not what we want, this is not the kind of language. Nobody, no male got up and no leader got up except yourself and say, this is not where we want to go this conversation. That didn't happen.
No, I would say, Steve, I saw an article from Noelle Nichols. She addressed it.
Yes.
I saw,
Journalists.
I also saw that Marian Bethel addressed it.
Yes, oh, that's right.
But
She
what
did-
I
she
would
did
say,
address it.
what I would say
Marian
though,
Bethel did address
is that they seem to, they just try to equate one with the other, and I do believe that is an unfair comparison because Richard Lightwan's comments were civil. They were civil.
Do you think, though, that that other people feel just the way that Archdeacon Palacios feels when it comes to his statements along the line? That just say it, just say it from a point of view. He doesn't hate anybody, I don't believe. He said it from a point of view. Let's get it together. We breathe too much, is what he's saying. We ought to do something about that. Is what I think he meant in spirit. So, do you suppose that many people, leaders included, church people included, feel the same way about such a thing?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that, and I would say too, I do believe that there are some among us who are irresponsible sexually. That is
No question about it.
There's no question about that. There are some of us who are irresponsible sexually. But when he pulled in all the poverty pieces and all that stuff, there are more reasons for poverty in our country, and in particular in the communities that we know poverty is really entrenched. There are more reasons for poverty than having too many children. More reasons. But I do believe that we need to, as a country, we need to embrace the position that there's only one legitimate context for sexual conduct and the birth of children, and that's marriage.
Yes.
And sadly, I think unless and until we need politicians to say that, see, they won't say that. They just
That's the
won't.
trouble. They're not
It-
active.
it is
They're not
trouble.
actively
That is the
involved.
right thing to say, but they will not say that. They won't say it.
Mhm.
They will go along with the program and tell people what they think people want to hear. And until we get buy-in by all of our leaders and all sectors of society, we will continue to have the majority of our children born out of wedlock.
Now, you wrote a letter, and of course, I'm sure you got feedback. Did people give you feedback that says that maybe this statement embodies the whole concept that we as a Black people are still in a mode of self-hate?
No, I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all. No, I was encouraged by all of the comments. I had no negative comments.
No, I don't mean that you got negative, but I mean just the fact that this statement was made, and it was made by a very high man in society, I suppose. When you look at it, the people kind of equated to when they heard this statement, that they offer commentary that this is just a symbolic or a symptomatic of this concept of self-hate, because people are here with the minute people say something, and he is somebody who say, look at them over there, just like a bunch of, and and then people say, well, that's a concept that there's this thing of self-hate still permeating the atmosphere in our country.
Well, what I would say is it's probably a case of where you have adopted derogatory words about you that others have said. Like, for example, there are people who use there are black people who use the N-word
right
on themselves when the N-word was an offensive word by people who were racial bigots. So in terms of using breeding, I don't think that's a word that's original with us as people of color and people who have a slave ancestry. I just think it's wrong. I think it's inappropriate to use that kind of language.
What's to be done, Pastor Cedric Boss, in a way of trying to harmonize the community on these particular statements? That the statements are obviously, when you compare them, there's always obviously a case of racial hypocrisy, just like you say. What can be done to bring about a kind of smoothing over, a kind of focus as to, all right, that's not being said. That's already been said. What do we do now? How do we move forward? How do we really properly deal with what it is that we are facing as a people in our country? And we are the perpetrators of it ourselves, because, one would never imagine that a black person would use a derogatory commentary that was used by Archdeacon Palacios, and just was flippantly saying it to make a point, and that was the size of it. I mean, what do we do to bring about a kind of, I suppose, informed, educated point of view as to what it is, where we are with the race relations in our country, and commentary that can be defamatory, derogatory, all of those negatives when we speak about our own.
Yeah. Steve, we need to have multiple conversations. One of the things, I did a lot of reflection on the race issue around majority rule. And quite frankly, I don't think that we have dealt with racism in this country. I think—
We never did, eh?
No, we haven't. I think we were blessed to have a quiet revolution. And so there was this change to a more democratic and more equitable form of political representation. But many of the injustices of the period of segregation in our country, we have dealt with those. And we need to find a way to deal with it, because time does not deal with it. And I think we must have that conversation. I think we need to have the conversation about the place of men and fathers in our society.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, Archdeacon Palacios did not put any responsibility on the men who give those women the multiple children, who treat those women as if they are baby machines. And quite frankly, if you want to place blame, the majority of the blame comes to the feet of men. I have never met a man or heard of a man who was raped. Never. Unless men actively participate in sexual relations, it's not going to happen. So I think we need to cease putting the lion's share of the blame at the feet of women, and we need to begin to say to men, lead and be responsible with your sexual habits.
Well, I'm getting some text messages here as people chime in on this whole matter. It was very, very timely at the time that I had put this show together. And so we're just getting to this particular show, and that's what I referred to when I talked about the backup of what is happening now. Sure. Because this is the show that I wanted to talk about in depth, when the actual statements were first made. This person says, that was a silly and irresponsible statement from the priest. First of all, the Bahamas is underpopulated. It's a fact that Bahamians, as black people, do not breed indiscriminately, is what this person is saying. And those are his statements about this whole matter with Archdeacon Palacios.
I would just say, Steve, I just think we need to drop the breed language. And to me, that's almost like the N word in sexual reproduction.
Understood.
We just need to drop it.
This person says, Steve McKinney, it is my opinion that if 50 years ago, the joy of an old man was in his children's children, we need to take a serious look at the changes in our majority ruled country. That changed that outlook, and now children is the cause of poverty, is what this person is saying.
And largely, I think that was part of the message that Archdeacon was saying, that children, you have more children, plenty of children, you're going to be poor. And that's not necessarily so.
Steve, I'm a woman. I'm black. I'm not stupid or dumb, and I have a common sense, and I have common sense. However, I agree with what the father and Mr. Lightman said. Maybe not the way it was said, but I agree with what this woman says, that she agrees. And then another person says, I think both men had a certain nationality in mind. That's another thing. They just didn't go there. Thus, the broad brush painting came in. In other words, this lady is suggesting that we want to take a look at some people who are called Bahamians in the Bahamas. And this is germane to that particular group that may have been maybe adopted Bahamians in a way, by way of paper, that kind of thing, and not necessarily the native Bahamian. And that's why this person is saying that, no, they didn't want to really say what they were meaning. Both men is what she's saying.
I think that's going too far.
She's suggesting that they mean a particular nationality of
that's
people.
speculative.
Yeah.
She's going in their minds and trying to say what they meant, and you can't do that.
Yeah, well, that's what she was saying. And, you know, a lot of people, Pastor Cedric Moss, hold that view. That it ain't us. That it ain't the native Bahamian. There's some other people who are now adopted the Bahamas and may even have citizenship that are breeding, well, not to use the term, but that are having the many children in our society.
And
that no one wants to really deal with that.
Well, Steve, deal with it in what way?
No, deal with it and in that we ought to be able to talk about the very responsible approach to humankind and to all people who are in fact perhaps in a way of having more than the usual. Now, once upon a time, your mommy and my mommy and everybody else had more than the now pigeon pair. You know, we call them pigeon pair, the boy and the girl, and that was it. There were large families in our society, from the native Bahamian who had 6 children, 8 children, 10 children.
My mother had 7.
That's the kind of thing. My mother had 8 children. I'm just saying that when we start this conversation, we have got to be prepared to go all the way and deal with all aspects of what we think our problem is. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's where people really sit. And a lot of people irresponsibly, Pastor Cedric Moss, irresponsibly blame somebody else because they say, well, that ain't us. We don't do that kind of thing. But the truth be told, we don't know, because I don't know if there's any statistical data that tells us what the childbirth rate is among any reliable data that tells us that these people who are saying that they're Bahamians is this, but they ain't really Bahamian. But these people who say they're Bahamian is this, and they really Bahamian. We don't have that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we need it, but
you may be right.
Yeah, I don't think we need it. I would say that the principle is that we should encourage people to be thoughtful in their reproduction and their ability to take care of their children, whether they are married or not. But I believe that, again, the larger conversation that we're dealing with has to do with those children who are being born out of wedlock.
Yes.
And we need to pull in all sectors of society to talk about that.
I agree with that. And just as I was telling you, here's somebody texting, Steve, they lying on Bahamians. They really want to say Haitians, but they're using our name as a scapegoat. That's what this person, his opinion. And that's the same way how the PLP and FNM and the preachers running away from illegal immigration, no one wants to deal with it. And this is where the problem is with the person.
I disagree with that. I think that, I know many, I shouldn't have said many, I know some Bahamian women who have many children and who would fit the description of having too many children for too many men out of wedlock.
Yeah. Well, you know, it is a broad discussion that has to be had. And I don't know if your recommendation would be that maybe you ought to just get into it and let's talk about it. Let's civilize people who want to find solutions to what our problems may be that sparks the whole increase in poverty and crime and the rest of it. Because let's face it, a lot of our fathers are missing in action. A lot of mothers have a whole lot to do. And a lot of mothers have plenty of influence, and they should be able to do a lot more than they are in some cases of wayward children and delinquent children. But let's look at it. If we are going to have a discussion, we've got to bring into the discussion the concept, the whole fact of the matter that fathers are missing. They don't have any time with their boys. They're not helping to bring their boys along in such a way that they are really men. And society is broken down in many regards as far as mentoring and those kinds of things. And so we have a lot of irresponsibility that's happening. That's why I said today in the show, irresponsibility, or is it a case of racial hypocrisy? Maybe it's a combination of all.
It is a combination of both, and it's a broad conversation that we need to have. And we need to talk about education as well, because that's one of the big determinants of poverty or not being poor. And it's a broad conversation. I would say to Steve, we need to appreciate that people make decisions for different reasons, and we may be on the outside looking at it and say, "Oh, that's a stupid thing that you did to have a child for that man, and you're not married to him." Well, you know, put yourself in her shoes, and you may do the very same thing.
Understood. We're talking today with Pastor Cedric Moss. He is here on the show with us. And we were looking at this whole matter, case of racial hypocrisy. He wrote a piece in the newspapers about it. I thought it was a very interesting piece, and you should read it. I think it's in the Tribune or the Guardian. I can't remember.
It's in both.
It's in both of them. And I think it happened somewhere around the 15th of January, 16th of January. And you can take a look at it because it is something that people have been talking about, but it's a kind of hush-hush kind of whisper, don't talk so loud, speak easy kind of thing, because we have never really dealt with this whole race matter. And as a result of it, it's now rearing its head again, and we're going to have to deal with it some way. We're going to have to deal with it.
Steve, even, I don't want to change the subject, Andy, but you talk about majority rule.
Right.
What does that mean? What does that really mean?
They tell me that.
And who does it include?
It's supposed to include all Bahamians, everyone.
It should.
Yeah.
But the way it is framed, Steve, 15% of our people are excluded, except for the brave, strong ones who will come and just grit through it when the conversation is just skewed in so many different ways. We should think about that. And, you know, my understanding of the records in terms of how the history of it all went, in 1962, the PLP got a majority of the votes, but still lost the parliament because of gerrymandering.
62 is the year women got the right to vote.
But in 67, they got the minority of the votes.
Right, they did.
So what is majority rule?
Yeah, it's a quandary. Something for us to think about and dissect.
What is majority rule? The majority of people in 67 voted against the PLP.
They did.
Yeah.
But they were saying it's because the company vote and all the other.
Not in 67.
No, not in 67. In 62.
Yeah, but still,
50s and
but
60s.
still, in 62, the PLP got the majority of the votes.
Yes, they did.
And
they
so really, if you talk about majority, that's where majority took place, but it didn't take place in 67.
Yeah. And I know that's a gray area for a lot of people, and some people say they don't like to talk about that because they want to appreciate that, you know, by the state, the power of the state, the majority of people made sure by their voting, the 1818 tie, the two who went across and made it, broke the tie, that symbolized the majority. And that's what they're saying.
If the majority of Bahamians in 1967 had voted for the UDP, that would have still been majority rule in the sense that the majority of people voted for whoever was leading.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's crazy for us to say, because we are black, we must vote for a majority black people. No, maybe let's just say that you have a situation where they're not competent and they're not the best to lead. Should we then begin to judge people by the color of their skin? No. If you have a situation where it happens that those in a party who would not represent the majority in terms of skin color are the best to lead the country, vote for them. Don't say we're not going to vote for you all because you all are not our skin color.
I see your point. I see your point. And that's a very debatable proposition you put on the table, because we could go all day, and I'm sure there are many who are listening and saying, boy, you know, I would say this to that. But, you know, my real point today about this case of racial hypocrisy, I brought it to the forefront. I think it needs to be discussed. I think it needs, so I put it on the table. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad I'm in this position to have a microphone, so that we can properly dissect and debate and analyze these issues, because these issues bleed into so many other things that we have in our country, and cause us to pause and say, you know, what kind of country is this that we have? All this crime, all this heartache, all this mayhem and misery and murder that we have. This is symptomatic of all of the problems that we see that we refuse to truly deal with.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that this conversation today will spark a conversation by some civil society group and black and white behaviors to come and say, look, here's what we have to do. You know, of course, they're going to be the people who are going to start this talk about reparations and the rest of it, and you owe us. And listen, the point is, we've got to grow up. We're off age in a big way, but we're still immature, you know, as a country. And we're still too petty about so many things, all this political stuff that we're interested in, all these colors and stuff. We are Bahamians who want to prosper under any government, under any circumstances, as long as this country is doing well. We have to pay attention to the socio-economic climate in our country and make sure we keep things in place. But because of the divide, because of the lip and tongue and pulling and that kind of stuff that's happening in our country, we can't get beyond the, what you call the tribalism attitude. We can't get beyond it. And so how can we really discuss and make the comparison and say, you know what? On this particular matter of a case of racial hypocrisy, this is something for the ages. This is a good paper to look at. This is something good for the University of the Bahamas to take a look at and really go by, dissect this thing and see what really exists here and how many things reach out from this and affect the whole country.
Yeah, no, I agree, Stephen. Let me just go back to something you said. I appreciate the strategic role that you and Peace and the MBM network, the strategic role that you play in the community and the kinds of topics that you bring for national conversation. I think it is vital, and I pray that the Lord continues to bless your station, that these kinds of topics can be put out there to spark national conversation. I believe that we need to find a way to include all of our people in our national development. And I believe that until and unless we address the race issue that we have in our country that we really never addressed, we're going to be a fractured country, and all of our people are not going to come to the fore and be invited to the fore to participate in national development.
I got a question for you, off topic from this, but still a part of the whole chemistry. What's going on in our country? A big fight at GHS the other day. People stop. These are students. These are our kids. They are in school. This is a public school. This is unbelievable what happened. And even though I don't think we recorded a death about in the whole matter. The whole thing is that this was a serious act of what is perceived as terrorism, because you can imagine how those kids were traumatized and the rest of it. Everybody running, and you saw the photographs or the pictures of this whole thing. What say you? Our leaders have been criticized that they didn't open their mouth and say one thing with regards to what took place. Nothing was said. I saw Jeff Lloyd's article in the newspapers today lamenting that the Prime Minister never even visited and tried to bring some assurance and things like that to smooth things over, to bring about the kind of harmonious kind of circumstance in such a bad and tragic situation. It's scary. And I'm saying maybe our own leaders, church, state, and everybody else, community leaders, are not stepping up to the plate And that's also lacking because the country seems to be, forgive this word, going to hell.
Yeah, well, Steve, the truth is no one went, not the prime minister went, no one went.
Nobody.
And what we have is a country where people are not held responsible for their actions. There's lawlessness in the country, and you have leaders who are interested more in being reelected than making the hard decisions that would be for the betterment of the country. There is no way that you should be able to take a person's life. When you take a person's life, when you murder another person, and the state says, what we're going to do is we're going to save your life, put you in prison, and feed you meals, and take care of you for 15 years, 20 years, or however many years. That is no consequence for that action. That is not a just punishment for taking another person's life. And so what happens in our country is you can take another person's life. And if you are convicted, then you will be rewarded with your life. And then if you're not convicted, you'll be free to go and try to do that again. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at what happened to JHS in terms of the stabbings. I'm not surprised that no one went from the prime minister down. Not surprised.
So we are just a loose, whatever happens kind of people.
Yeah, Steve, listen. I always, and I shouldn't joke about it, I'll say this. When I was younger, my parents used to go out and leave my oldest sister in charge of the 6 of us. She was number 7. And when they walked out the door, it was every man for himself. We did whatever we want. That's the way I describe our country right now. Everyone does whatever they want, what is right in their own eyes.
Who's the most mischievous? Was it you or Paul?
I let my sister Rosalie tell you that.
I got one more thing before I let you go today, because we only have an hour, and I'm going to let you go so I can bring the other guests in. But Reverend Cedric Barnes, when we look at this, you've been outstanding in your work in the community church for so long, and you've been to the forefront of so many issues. You don't seek publicity, you just stay in your own corner and do your thing. And I respect that, and I admire that. And certainly I know that your father, your late father, would have been very, very proud of his brood, the whole group of you. And so I said it, man, that he was. And so this is why I'm saying that's a wonderful thing and position for you to be in. But you don't seem to have a tolerance of wrongdoing or people who just do what they feel like, and there's no kind of accountability. I talk about, and you gave it credit earlier, I talk about Fred Smith. Fred Smith made some statements. A lot of people don't know what happened. I don't know how they got his voice note or how they got this information that he made these statements, but there he was, reportedly by the information from the press, talking to a group of people who were coming into the Bahamas as, I believe, potential investors or even persons who wanted to, buy a home. Condo association owners. And he said all these things about Black people and how they behave and how they're xenophobic and so forth and so on. And they ain't like you. Don't believe they like you. They only want to use you. Just bring the money and to the hell with you. That, and he realized after someone perhaps would have played the tape in exposing him that boy, that was a no. So he apologized. He apologized. I don't know how much people would want him to say, well, was he sincere? The thing is, he apologized, and we now know that is what happened. But now we have this suspicion. A lot of people have confirmed suspicion that this is what we were saying all along, that this fella just he's just not a regular guy who's a regular nice guy, is what people say. No, he may very well be a regular nice guy, okay, but the perception is because he said these things, this is how he really feels. What do you do in circumstances like that? Because some people say, there are bigots all over the world, and certainly we can't believe that we're any different. What do you do in circumstances like that as a community, as a country, to allay the kind of fears of, you shouldn't say that, and this is how we feel, and the whole thing is just one mix up, we against him now because this is what he said, and we found him out. How do you deal with that kind of stuff? Because it seems like it could be more explosive, and it can discolor all that he would have worked so hard for. He's a brilliant lawyer, and it can discolor all that he's worked hard for, or all that he's been trying to achieve through advocacy. And people say, now, wait a second, who's this guy? And you see, and that's what I'm saying. What are your thoughts on that, your comments?
What Fred Smith said was inappropriate and wrong, and to his credit, he apologized. I think what we have to do is we have to accept him at his word, and we should commend him for apologizing. I think that's the way we encourage people to own what they've done. If you refuse to own what he has done, I mean, if you refuse to accept his owning of what he has done and expressing regret over it, then you're encouraging other people to not own theirs. So the only thing I can see us doing is saying, you're to be commended for seeking to right the wrong.
Are you prepared to be a part of any grouping that wants to, let's have forums where we can discuss these kinds of issues, the child pornography issue, the children having babies out of wedlock, children, like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds like that?
Not just children, Steve, anyone.
Are we prepared?
See, anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think you have
Out
the
of
right.
wedlock.
Yeah, I don't think we should say, oh, when you get 18, you can have the children out of wedlock.
No.
It's just
You
wrong.
gotta be within the concept of
the
marriage.
ages.
Yeah. So are we prepared to begin some kind of dialogue and discussion to lift the debate on a national level about things that really matter in a baby society?
Yes, I would be happy to be a part of that. And I try in my own way through writing to speak to those issues. But more than talking about it, we need to be able to bring government policies to bear so
Yes.
that we can get some results on the ground.
Pastor Cedric Moss, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
And I'm happy that you came by and take a look at this whole matter of a case of racial hypocrisy. Something for us to think about and something for us to take a great look at and share our views. Thank you again. And of course, we hope to have you back soon with others who will perhaps discuss some other issues that on the moral level that we need to bring to the forefront of our country.
Sure, just let me know.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, it's right now 4 behind the hour, 6 o'clock. I've got to turn the page and go into some other discussions. Did you realize that there could be a whole bit of corruption? Can I use that? Yeah. Because some people are about to bring this nation to its knees. And I'm talking with the unions in the Bahamas. Unions have gotten together, the whole 9 yards of all the unions, the TUC, the NTUC. And as a result of that, we can be at a stop level very shortly in the country because some unionists are very angry and they've got tons of issues. Lukaya, they've got everything that you can think of, sandals, Lukaya, the thing at Paradise Island, the taxi drivers, everybody is right now clamoring to get the attention of the authorities in this country. We're going to turn our attention to that in just a minute because we're going to bring the union people on. And this was something that was kind of like brewing for a little while. You remember when the unions and the sandals thing happened and they were ready to march and all that? Well, I'm understanding they're about to march any day now, and it could be a matter of hours. What do you think? We're back in just a minute. This is Hard Copy.
Now listen.
Don't forget, on this mic. Welcome back. This is Hard Copy, and in this part of Hard Copy today, you may hear some stuff that may make you say, "Are you ready?" And are you really ready? Because it seems as if there's going to be some marching that has not been done yet. There were some people who were marching, the We March people. You heard about it. We heard the union making a lot of attempts and threats to do some things in the time of the Sandals episode that took place. But so many unions are in turmoil this particular time. When I say that, I'm talking about the atmosphere of industrial relations in the Bahamas is not where it ought to be. And as a result of it, unions have just had it. It's, they've had enough. And it seems like they were talking with some people who just have been saying over and over, we've had enough. It's time to do something. And the time apparently is now because they're getting ready to march. Now, this may not sound with the kind of impact because I want you to, you've been hearing for so many marches, I want you to go back a couple of months. Remember Sandals. Go back a couple of months, remember the Noli Fossil. Go back a couple of months and see that the people went to court, but nothing actually happened. Go back a couple of months and then look at all the memories and all the things of the fire. Go back and look at the BEC. Go back and look at the air traffic controllers. Look at those people in the nurses union, all these kinds of things that are happening. And of course, go back and look at the Bahamas business union people who in fact just can't take it no more. That's what the word is. We can't take it no more. And that means that something is about to happen. Now you're hearing it for the very first time. You may see some stuff later on in the news, but you are hearing it right now in real time on Hard Copy because something is about to happen. Obi Ferguson is with me today, among many others, and I'm going to give Obi that first shot to tell me because I've been asking, when? And somebody says, we're supposed to say now, but is it happening now? What's happening? Obi Ferguson, the president of the Bahamas Union of Trade, Bahamas Trade Union Congress here in the Bahamas. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Steve, for giving us this opportunity to talk to the Bahamian workers and the Bahamian people. And I'm here with my colleagues, President of the Moises Union, Secretary General of the Moises Union, and Mr. Henfield, who's from the leader, along with Mr. Boswick, who's the leader of the March, and we have my director of communication, Fred Muntz. We're here to demonstrate, Steve, precisely what you said. Enough is enough. There's no more speculation, no more general position. We will do something this week.
This week?
It's a fix.
It's already in motion.
It's already in motion. We have no way of avoiding it, Steve. We have asked the government to deal with some specific issues that we thought we ought to be able to sit down and
Nothing has happened.
No, the Prime Minister said to me and to Mr. Henfield the last March, just before the eve of the first March, that he would meet with us. He wrote us a letter.
It's now coming home to roost.
Hey,
He's meeting with some people, but it ain't you all. He's in convention.
But he will meet with us. This week he will meet with us. I can assure you he will meet with us as a bloc. And this time, we're not walking in, Steve, and walking out and saying you got a gun to my head. For 4.5 years, in some instances, cannot be considered unreasonable.
Yeah. You all have been patient. You all have taken long. I mean, and that's why I'm saying maybe this is now it. You saying definitively this week. That is more specific than you've been in a long time on these issues. So
yes.
Obviously some traction is happening now.
Yes, Steve, we have given them fair chance. We didn't want to jump and show that we tried to destabilize somebody or try to run against the government or whatever. That's not what we're into. We're into doing things for the working people. So when we meet, whenever we meet, the We March group, they have some specific things that we agreed by way of resolution that until all of those matters are addressed, nothing is happening. That's our position. We can't go there piecemeal and try and do.
The whole 9 yards.
We go
One
do it.
time.
One time. I mean, the guys at Cabbage Beach.
Mhm.
I mean, what is happening?
Sore topic, no resolution.
We're gonna try to bring some resolution. And remember, Steve, it was the working people. You know what really bothered me this majority rule day? I looked and I did not see one trade union on any major television platform.
You're forgotten. Trade unions are forgotten.
Lady Fox, she's still alive.
Mhm.
She still have kids who are functioning. I mean, how could you? How could you talk about majority rule when in fact it was Serrano who played a major role
Mhm.
in causing majority rule to become a reality? But no reference. But you see what we're doing here? We mix with the people. The We Care, the We March group, we are together. We have made a decision, and trust me, we're going to carry it out.
No.
The noises have
Mhm.
serious problems. Customs and immigration from God knows when. Malia from, and the beat goes on.
No resolution.
No resolution.
And you all have been basically ignored. Now you have injected. Something has happened here. The We March people who have been phenomenal when it comes to
No
organization and putting it together,
No question.
and bold and courageous. They were here on my show some time ago. They were here last early in the year, and I'm looking at the fact that it takes a combination of people who are mad as hell and mad enough to bring about the kind of changes. Now, obviously, this embracing matter that has happened involves a very powerful component: trade unions.
Right.
And that's everybody, because so many people are members of the Trade Union Congress,
Right.
the National Congress of Trade Unions,
Right.
and all of these affiliate associations and unions that you're talking about. So we now have movement with a group of people. Renard Henfield is at the forefront of that in organizing a lot of things with marches in this country. I believe now that you have said what you said just now, that people know that something really is about to happen, because them We March people, they don't play, they're
Right.
serious.
Right.
And they have made their point.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And now with the unions involved,
Yes.
that means a larger, bigger, bolder group of people who are in fact about to go on Bay Street or go to Rossville or wherever you all are going to go,
Right.
but there will be a marching.
No question about that.
Understood.
That's a fact.
Mm.
Yes.
So let me ask Amantia Williams, who in fact is a part of Bahamas Business Union. Am I right? Nurses Union.
Yes.
What say you?
President.
Sorry?
President.
President. Yeah, she's the president, Madam President. Forgive me. Sometimes when I remember, I see other faces that were sitting there one time ago with a fellow named Julian Mullington. And there was another lady who was sitting there, but you understand.
This is the new.
But this is now Amantia Williams who is speaking.
Yeah.
And you all have a lot of problems that you had from that time, and nothing has been resolved. And so you are part of all this that's happening. Who are some of the affiliate unions and all that people can understand that something great and something meaningful and something impactful is about to happen sometime this week?
Well, thank you for having us here
Hmm.
on the Bahamas Nurses Union. We're glad to be here. And today we sit here because we do share the same thoughts and ideas from the other unions. We've been tarrying with this, and we're ready to give birth. We've been to several meetings on several occasions, and we're tired of walking out with no resolutions. So today we're saying to our nurses, and we've been saying, we're ready and we're going forward with a force. And we want everyone to know that, there's issues in what you might hear is referred to as public health. Department of
Yes.
Public Health,
Mhm.
and which is known as DPH. We have several issues. 10 years without a promotion.
Mhm.
Could you imagine?
The plight of the people, right?
That's exactly 10 years. What does this do to the nurses' morale? It drops it.
Mhm.
PHA is going to put on an exercise of promotion, which is at the end of the month. 10 years DPH has been waiting for a promotion.
Mhm.
Outstanding letters, confirmations, nursing been working from 2014,
I know.
have not been confirmed in their positions.
Mhm.
Graduate nurses waiting for 2 years to be paid for. These are the concerns, and we need nurses. We have 700 islands. Every rock, there's a nurse. When there's no doctor, there is
There's
a
a
nurse.
yeah.
There we have ports, the airport, the shipping. When there's a major crisis in the Bahamas, who is there at the front line? The nurses.
Round the clock.
We have an issue out there in the public health, maternal and child health, no cars. And you can find a government car, sit up to a bar room every time you drive around the
I
corner.
know. I know.
And we can't get a nurse to get a car to go out there to perform duties. Come on, what is this saying to our country?
It's
The
broken.
health, it is true,
Place
it
is
is broken.
Mhm.
It is broken, it needs to be fixed. And we're gonna fix it.
Now, you're going to fix it, and you're going to try to get the attention of those, because I don't know what's going to take, Amanja. I don't know what's going to take, what it's going to take, because I've seen Brother Obie Ferguson out there laboring, Brother John Pinda, and so many others, Julian Mullings, and so many others over the years, laboring and laboring and laboring. It just seems as if nobody is listening, nobody is checking. Something drastic has to happen, I suppose, for people to appreciate that, we mean business. And it's unfortunate that it has to be from a point of view of stopping everything so that people can look and see what's going on here. Julian, I want to ask you and to talk to me about this, because everybody knows this problem has been persisting, yet no one has done anything to, in fact, avert this and say, well, before these fellas then, from now we march, infiltrate all of these unions and all these other people who are having troubles, and get them to see how you do it. We better do something. But nothing has happened.
Well, it's sad that you have to get to this point to make the authorities, or bring to the authorities' attention that you're serious about doing your job. For nurses to function, they need the tools.
No,
For health to be promoted in this country, you need to provide them with the facilities and the tools to do so. But it must be in a healthy environment. We have the situation in Abaco that we've been addressing, the union has been addressing for a number of months, years. There's a new facility in Abaco that should have been opened and utilized. They still have nurses and other persons working in that moldy infested clinic. Patients who are sick going in a moldy infested area.
This is not good.
Which is not good. And that building has been condemned a long time ago
Stop it.
for use. It has been condemned, but they continue and insist that the nurses work in that environment. One nurse was instructed by her physician because she came down with a chest infection. And she was instructed not to return.
There are so many buildings that have been, that are supposed to be under proper maintenance that
That doesn't happen.
They're just not working.
That
I
doesn't
know
happen.
other government buildings
Agreed.
in the government sector, the agencies that everyone is going. They don't even go to work. They're in and out of the doctor's office, and this is continuous. And I'm wondering, well, if you know this is what the problem, how come you can't move these people out of here?
Steve, we have asked the authorities for what is their action plan to correct the problem. They keep arranging to meet again. Blue Road Clinic, we were there a few months back. We sent a communication to the administrator regarding the problem. We have not had a proactive response on that matter. Okay, and so when you don't have proactive actions being taken for health, from the persons in charge of health within this country to do something, if I'm asking you to do your job, but you're not doing it. But yet you're expecting the nurses to do theirs. There seems an imbalance there.
No question about it.
Okay.
But the nurses are not the only one. Everybody seems to be having a whole list, a laundry list of complaints and things that they need to be taken care of. I'm sure that you can speak to a number of things. Freddie Munnings, who's the Director of Communications for the Bahamas Trade Union Congress. There's so many things. I mean, when you list them, it is just unbelievable. People listening around New York and Chicago and Washington this afternoon, and all over London, listening to us. People in China who listen regularly to Hard Copy, they are like, well, what you all doing over there in the Bahamas, our home? What are you all doing? When in fact, everybody is complaining. The people at Malia, the people at Sandals, the people in Grand Bahama, all those areas, memories, the Lucaya, all kinds of things are happening in our country, Freddie Munnings Jr. And it's not like Obie Ferguson or John Pinder or others have not been tackling it, trying to make it work. You've hit a wall. What do you do now?
Steve, thank you very much once again for the opportunity for us to address these very serious issues. We have a country in crisis at the moment when it comes to workers' rights. And what is amazing, as our president has already stated, is that we are working with a government that came out of the belly of the workers.
Absolutely.
The foundation of this current government and previous governments over the last 50 years came from the belly of the workers.
You think that's remembered?
If you look, sometimes we wonder, if you look dating back to the 1930s, back in Inagua, when there was a industrial uprising, if you look at 1942, the Burma Road riots, when we look at 1958, the general strike, we consider 62, women's suffrage movement. We consider 1965, Black Tuesday, 1967, majority rule, all of which were founded on the workers of this nation. And then we come to the present day when workers' rights are being taken away, or attempts are being made to take away the rights of our workers. And among us this afternoon, we have 3 attorneys who tell us that when you have a government whose chief protectors of the workers, in the person of the Director of Labor and the Minister of Labor, who is going to the lengths of ILO to seem to be taking away the rights that we have enjoyed over the last 50 years. Something's got to be wrong, Steve. And so we say enough is enough. You know, the father of the nation once said, if you are not willing to fight for the Bahamas, you don't deserve it. Well, let me tell you this evening, the workers of this country, under the directorship of our leader, Mr. Obie Ferguson, have decided that we are prepared to fight for our country. And so, to just give you some examples, Sandals workers, 600 workers unceremoniously dismissed. 12 executives of the Union of the Bahamas Hotel Maintenance and Allied Workers Union dismissed under the guise of renovations. My God, Steve, our father of labor must be turning in his grave. The late Sir Clifford Darling has got to be having conniptions in his grave as we speak. I would dare say the father of the nation must be having some serious tossing and turning when we understand what is happening to the workers of this nation. You look at the air traffic controllers, risk allowance. and money's not being paid that were owed dating back 10 years. My God, man, what do we have to do? You look at the Cabbage Vendors Association, when the rights of our people are being denied, who's simply trying to make a living for their families, Steve.
Yeah.
You look at all of the customs and immigration and our Lukaya, and I can go on and
Everybody,
on.
it's just
And
like
everybody
is
is
in this
saying,
dilemma.
huh? The workers of the country are being taken for granted and being abused. And, you know, we are so disappointed. And I must say that publicly, that we had to go to these lengths. When you have in the Bahamas, that Mr. Obie Ferguson several years ago had to go to the level of the Privy Council to win the rights of workers to assemble and associate among themselves.
We have slipped way down.
What is happening in our country? And if we don't take a stand now, we do not deserve to call ourselves trade union leaders.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is quite interesting, Freddie Mike Jr., because the truth be told, this is a fantastic time to take a stand. All of the players are in their positions. PLP is in convention. Free National Movement just came out of convention. There are others who are going to be going into convention. There's all kind of caucuses happening around, and this group and that group and the other group, trying to see if they can bring about people in a big room to say, come with us, we care for you. I don't suppose that unionists are going to be falling into that trap, because somebody texted me a short time ago say, these same unions tell somebody the last time, go with them fellas from the PLP. And Shane Gibson and all these union people who's supposed to know about union rules and regulations have apparently turned their backs on the union. This is the worst state of affairs the unions have been in. You know, I've been a unionist all my life, a part of all these unions, and from a hotel union to just being closely affiliated. And I can tell you definitively, this is the worst state of affairs of unions, trade unions in the Bahamas. And I'm wondering what took you guys so long to see that something else has got to give. And I'm going to ask you that question in a minute, Obi. You just think of that.
Okay.
I want to involve Renard, oh my God. Henfield. Renard Henfield. Renard Eric Henfield. See, if I call his whole name, I didn't get it.
That's why I tell you that.
Renard Eric Henfield, who is at the forefront of marches in this country. And this too is a new phenomenon, because Bahamians always used to like the march. They used to like to go watch the procession. Now they want to participate. They are involved, intimately involved in anything that is calling itself march these days. And certainly Mr. Henfield has been at the forefront of these kinds of events. Brother Henfield, here you are again. This time the unions say, come and help to lead the way with us, because let us lock hands together, because we have great problems in our country.
Steve, always a pleasure. Thank you so much again for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Several weeks ago, when we marched, asked if the unions would stand by our side. The unions didn't bicker and dance around that. The unions showed up, the workers showed up, and they were in full support of We March. And We March was trying to raise awareness, inspire Bahamians to stand up and to demand better. Show up, stand up, speak up, demand better. This is your country, you know you deserve better. Stand up, and the unions and the workers were there. So now the unions have said they're ready, it's time. We March doesn't need to ask what's the time for. The unions say they're ready, and we are in full support of the unions and the entire support base of We March. But it hurts my heart sitting here in this room. You know, I'm 37, I'm the little boy in the room. And it hurts my heart to see, you know, the persons around me who have been fighting for so long, and who have received nothing but disdain and the greatest disrespect from the people we elect to look out for us. And they've been fighting for so long, and for so long they've been ignored. For so long they've been promised things, and they have to hear what the conditions persons are working in Abaco. And around this country, while we have ministers of government traveling around the world, first class, staying in 5-star resorts, blowing $30 million on a party called Carnival. And our people, our workers, these are husbands, wives, someone's children, someone's grandparents are suffering and struggling in this country. And some people would ask, what the union fussing about?
Yeah, they would.
And I, for the first time in my life, at 37 years old, I've only realized in the last few months what the union is fighting for. The unions are fighting for the average person in this country. And persons like myself haven't supported them in the past. But now I am in full support now that I understand and I know what the unions have been fighting for. I see the disrespect that's being shown to the unions. When an administration disrespects the union workers, they disrespect the average Bahamian. And this is an administration in power who rode in on the backs of the average Bahamian, the small man. People who sacrificed and made sandwiches and switcher and marched and, did for these people to become the government, to get in power. And they've turned their backs on the people. And then they wrote in most recently on believe in Bahamians. Instead, they meant believe in a small minority of the majority of Bahamians or believe in foreigners. And I stand with the unions, and I have asked the entire We March fan base, support base, volunteers, everybody to stand with the unions. I saw a post the other day and someone said, forgive the inconvenience. We are trying to change the world. Well, forgive the inconvenience that may be caused. But the unions are trying to stand up for our people. The unions are trying to demand better for our parents, our mothers, our aunts, our uncles. These persons aren't FNM, DNA, these are Bahamians. We're not anti anybody. We are standing up to whoever's in power saying no more. We've had enough of promises. We've had enough of disrespect. And we want better for our workers, our people. And I intend to stand with unions as the unions have stood with We March.
I appreciate that. One of the things that's quite interesting here, I got a text that says, Steve, it's high time the unions stand up. Thank God. I hope they don't let the PM flam them. He says, I am a city market worker. I am still waiting on my money. This PLP is not the same PLP from back then because they ain't checking for us. And that's what this person says on text. And of course, there are many text messages like that WhatsApp coming in today because people have had their food. They just had enough of the whole matter. John Bostwick has also had enough of a whole lot of matters. And, John told me that something was coming down the pipe and I better look out for it. And it was something to do with the union. I say, what are you talking about? Because, I normally am to the forefront of these things. But John told me that this is the deal, my friend. And he called into the show, what was that, yesterday? That was on Friday. Called into the show and said, this is the deal. And for a moment, I just sat. I said, well, how come what was going on here? If they kept it from me, they must be dead serious because they didn't want no one to kind of like loop, to get the information out before time. So I asked John, you knew what this thing, it is happening now, and obviously there's some definiteness about this. This is not like in the past with threats that we end up calling idle threats because that is what the politicians call it. They say, okay, right. Now here's something that seems like this is imminent, this is definite, this is deliberate, and you know about it.
Well, Steve, definitely, and thank you. And yes, I did call you, and I did indicate that something was coming down the pipeline. The truth is that this is a lip service administration, and I have been accusing them of being a lip service administration here with you on hard copy for some time. But We March is definitely not a lip service organization, nor are the unions that we are sitting affiliated with. One of the points I want to make, Steve, is that the affiliation between We March and the Trade Union Congress is from its inception. So from the We March coalition came into being, the Trade Union Congress was a part of We March and has been moving along with We March from the start. And so, as Renard has said, they answered our call, and we are standing in solidarity, in full solidarity, in the full meaning of that word, with the workers of this country. As Renard has also said, the workers of this country, that is everybody. Whether you are particularly represented by a particular trade union or negotiation bloc or not, You benefited as a worker from this country. You benefited from the Employment Act. The Employment Act came as a result of union agitation. And you benefited from minimum wage. That came about as a result of union agitation. So when you talk about moving with the union, you're talking about moving with the workers of this country. The largest employer in this country is the government. And typically sitting opposite most of these unions is the government. And it is amazing to me, and beyond amazing, is absolutely, as Bernard said again, disgusting to know that the government is making Bahamians represented in bargaining units. It's bad enough that they abuse us one by one. But when you give a commitment to a bargaining unit and you come to an agreement after months and years of negotiations, as in the case of the air traffic workers with their overtime or holiday pay, there's a number. They've agreed the number. It's in writing. They just won't pay them. But they could turn around, Steve, and admit to paying a former cabinet minister $500,000 to put up the most atrocious decorations that Bay Street has ever seen for Christmas.
Who that?
Okay. Then they could turn around a florist, and then they could turn around and pay $250,000 for majority rule day decorations. And they can't turn around and pay the air traffic controllers the $1.3 million that they agreed years ago that they owe them. It is the fly in their face. It's flippant. And so we all feel this, and we all feel along with them, because not only are they our friends and our family, and because we all have persons who are workers and are members of the union, we are all workers, but we also feel for them as disrespected Bahamians across the board. And we have many of the issues are issues that we march share fully in common. Cabbage Beach, for example. Cabbage Beach is an issue about beach access rights for all Bahamians. And that is something that is championed very much by We March across the board. And it is something that is particularly represented by the Cabbage Beach Vendors Association. And so you will find across the board, there are those things. There are many issues that We March has concerns with regards to customs and revenue collection. And those persons working in those agencies have some serious concerns too. So the ability to stand in solidarity, we want to know where the VAT has gone. All right, customs, we stand in solidarity. They're collecting a lot of this money. We want to know where it's gone. And they too want to know how they are collecting all this money, and they can't collect their salaries. So it is time. And a lot of people have been saying you could march and you could march, Steve, and you could march and you could march. And I like to parrot the words of Ronnie Butler, because Ronnie said it all up there. Ronnie said it all. Ronnie talked about the monkey in the workshop and how the monkey got his tail caught. And we indicated that the monkey soon get his tail caught because he keep messing around in this workshop. And it ain't long now. Well, the time has come. The time has come. The people have said that enough is enough. The people have said that resoundingly. The unions and the workers are now saying enough is enough. Enough been enough. And so that call is going out in solidarity. And Steve, the last point I want to make is that I want Bahamian people to realize that sometimes I was raised on the motto, many mantra, but one of them was, son, freedom ain't free. Freedom is the most expensive commodity on the planet Earth. Freedom is not free. And so Bahamians, you have to be prepared to be ready to make some sacrifices for the freedoms that we are now demanding. Freedom is not going to come free. Freedom is going to come with some sacrifice, some hardship, some little discomfort. Because, when you talk about slowing down things, that slows it down for everybody. But it is also to say that we need to do this. We need to bring this country to heel. Sometimes we've got to pull the leash and pull it hard. And so that we can get the full attention of this administration and any successive administration to know that this new generation of labor leaders have come back 50 years, and they have the full support of this present generation of born free leaders, this present generation of We March leaders like Renard Enfield, Eric Enfield, that we all stand together in solidarity, and we are going to change this country. We're not playing. We are going to change this country. Enough is more than enough.
I appreciate it. I want to put that big question to Lee Ferguson, because we now say that, boy, it looks as if it's happening now, it's imminent, and some people say, well, this is the week, this is a key week. Everybody's in conference or something, so maybe this is a good time to let the message go forward and that people can hear what the unions have to say. But we're going to do that after the break. I've got to run to a break and pay the bills. Final break here this afternoon on Hard Copy. I've got Amancha Williams with me, and Julian Mullings, and of course, Renard, Eric Henfield, and Freddie Mullings Jr., and John Bostwick, and did I say Julian Mullings? Yes, he's here too. And Obi Ferguson is there with me today because there's serious stuff now. The clock is on the countdown, and you may be thinking that this is just a joke.
It ain't no
What
joke,
if you
no.
get to see and wake up in the morning and they are all out there from Fox Hill to the Cable Beach Strip? What do? You don't press the panic button. You say, boy, maybe we ought to surrender now. We'll see. We're coming back. This is Hard Copy. Boy, it looks as if I'm hearing all kinds of stuff. I can't tell you all what I'm hearing because I don't want to, alarm you, but you need to be very, very cognizant of what's going on here because something big is about to come down the pike, and you heard it right here this evening on Hard Copy Live because the people them tired. That's the truth about the matter. The people them tired. And also among the people who are tired are people like Sloan. Sloan is here with me. Sloan is a part of the Bahamas Immigration and Customs Union, I think.
That's right.
He's the man who's been talking a whole lot about all kinds of concerns. We've been hearing him from time to time, and I'm surprised that nothing. I believe they've been holding you back. I believe, Sloan, that they've been holding you back. Say, no, sir, not yet, not yet, not yet, because you seem to have been ready to move a long time.
Listen, thank you, first of all, Steve, for having me as well.
Mhm.
The reality is, the staff in Customs and Immigration, pretty much we've come to the end of that road. There's nothing left. If you recall, in 2012, we had to deal with the former administration on the same basic issues,
Mhm.
And the key issue confronting Customs and Immigration today is simply the signing of an industrial agreement. Steve, we've already came to an agreement in 2014. In July of last year, we came to another agreement. And all that simply means is Customs and Immigration, we have an agreement,
Mhm.
It is your government who refuses to simply give you what you have a right to. Now, bear in mind, they can throw a big party, and they've done 2 of them already, I think to the tune of $30 million. But you're not that important, and you're the ones putting that money in the till for them to do it. These people don't care about these workers, Steve. Straight up, this is a group of people who have no regard for the workers in this country. Had they done so, this would have been a done deal. I've said over and over, Customs and Immigration were not interested in playing politics. We were dealing with the government on face value. We needed our issues resolved. We did it with the former administration, and we're going to do it with this one. And let me say to you, my colleagues, forget that color thing. That means nothing. Because all we are to them is just a tick in the box. A tick in the box. Meanwhile, they may be stuffing their pockets, but they can't give you the smallest of monies. What is 166 bucks, Steve? What is that? The members voted for that. That's what the government offered them. And the members voted for it. Now, if it was me, like I told them personally, I would not have accepted that. 166 bucks? But that's what the members voted for. And so the least the government could do is simply sign off on it. Now, that's only one issue, the contract. We got staff, trainee officers in Customs and Immigration who have not even been confirmed. It's the same situation with the nurses, eh?
Yes.
They're not confirmed. What are they going to do at 1,500 bucks, Steve, a month? I mean, let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's what you call underemployment by the government of all people. Man,
You ought to know
something got to change. So we're calling on you, Customs and Immigration, be prepared. I've already spoken to some of you. You know who you are, you know where you are, you know the islands that I've spoken to. This thing is here. This is in the face of government. It's in the face of the country and indeed the world. So be prepared. I will be giving you voice notes very shortly on what is going to happen and when it's going to happen. So please stand by and be prepared.
Obie Ferguson, it seems eminent. What's happening here now?
Oh, yeah,
Are you gonna put it out there today, or are you going to just tell them to wait and be patient? But I think people are now eager. In Grand Bahama, I'm sure that they are eager. In Grand Bahama, things are just not as good as it ought to be, and it's not been that way for a long time. What's the word? I mean, do we give the signal now, and then tomorrow everybody's out in the road? I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's the word?
Steve, I'm so eager to say the exact specific time. But, you know, trade union people tend to hold back a little bit. But let me assure you, let me assure the Bahamian people, let me assure all workers in this country, whether you're in a union or not is irrelevant. We want you to come when we ask you to come. This is working people. We all are workers. So when I call you, I want you to come. When the remarch call, we want you to come and just follow the instructions. But rest assured, Steve, this is the end of the road. We can't go no further. We have tried every single thing. Look at Malia. Why can't the agreement, why can't the government cause this Department of Labor to function? If you call a meeting, you go to the meeting. In other countries, all in the Bahamas, the fellas say, ain't coming. Why? Because the Minister of Labor says, the Attorney General, sorry, she says, if you don't come, I wouldn't do anything. I'm not going to prosecute you. So how could you get a case heard at the Labor Board? You cannot, because the employer decided that they're not going to come. And if they don't come, they commit a criminal offense. So she grants a nullity. So we left with no alternative but to do precisely what we're doing. And I call the church. As a matter of fact, we're going to be contacting President Patterson. We're going to be contacting him because we want him to give us prayers before we begin. We want the church to come out. We want all workers to come out. And we got some other things to do. but we're gonna do it all together. This is no time to play around. This is our country, and it's pointless, ladies and gentlemen. We build a country for other people. This is our country. We're not gonna allow this nonsense to continue to happen. Shane Gibson said one of the reasons why he couldn't sign the agreement for customs and immigration, because the bargaining unit entails clerical workers, and clerical workers ought not be entitled to insurance. I said, well, holy smoke. Steve, the bargaining unit is the bargaining unit. You ain't got 3 or 4 different groups within the bargaining unit. There's one bargaining unit.
Yeah.
But could you imagine?
And this is the leader of this is the Minister of Labor who's
The
Yes.
Minister
making
of
this
Labor.
happen.
Something
I mean,
wrong
what do
here.
you do?
It's
Who
real.
came out of labor?
Who came out of labor?
And that's a challenge.
I mean, how do you, where do you, look,
That's a challenge.
so Randall and Clifford Allen and others, they did it. And look, they made a fundamental change, even though they're not getting the credit that they deserve. And I've done a lot of research on this stuff. And I said to myself, majority rule. Who introduced old age pension? That's what I asked. The PLP was formed in 1953. The riot was in 1942. You follow me?
I got you.
When the governor went down by his house and he gonna read off all these things, he now put in effect to pacify the movement, the working people. One was one man, one vote. One was the suffrage movement, Steve. One was the establishment of the labor department that we can't even go to now. You follow me?
I got you.
One was the domestic workers and agricultural workers being allowed to form unions. These things happen. The right to sue your employer on the job for
Now, they
negligence.
don't even exist. I mean, they're there.
They're acting
but,
like we are some bad people.
Yeah.
And now they sit, Steve, on the throne as prime ministers, as ministers, and they're not prepared to entertain us. But you know, Steve, every rope got an end. Well, this is the end of the rope.
And what way is gonna get?
Exactly.
I got you.
And I'm calling on all workers, all workers, all workers, all church leaders, all parishioners. And I happen to be a parishioner of Zion. I got a very dynamic pastor there.
That's right.
So I can publicly invite him to be there
So
to support this
the
movement.
suspense is in the air. It could be any day now.
Any day.
And a lot of things are happening. And I believe that there are some who would like to see this happen while the TV camera
This week.
and newspaper people there and all of the photographers, or as one guy used to tell me, the photographers out doing their thing, and we'll see if this is the week. But before I go, and I have to end, we've been talking today with Mancha Williams, who's the president of the Nurses Union, Julian Mullings, who's the Secretary General, Snow Smith, who's the president of Customs and Immigration, of course, Renard Eric Hetfield, who's the man in charge of the We March Bahamas, and they've been making many moves. John Bostwick, who is also a part of that particular movement, and certainly it's been my pleasure to have them here today. Obi Ferguson, the president of the Bahamas National Congress of Trade Unions, the Bahamas Trade Union Congress, what I would say, and they've all been good stewards. They've all been laborers in the vineyard. They've all been working assiduously to try to get things done. Maybe something is about to happen now. You've been warned. Let's see if, in fact, this week runs out as the PLP simultaneously have their convention. Let's see if the week runs out or the sand runs out of the hourglass, and we'll see how we registered it. If they did something, if they didn't do anything. But before we go, I just got to say this to you. I got a text just now. Grand Bahama booming, according to Mr. Dowell, is what this person says. It says, but say Grand Bahama booming, according to Dr. Dowell. But memories closed, the casino closed, Princess closed, Ginn closed, Patelco, Batco closed, Butler's closed, Xanadu closed, With Dixie closed, Sawyer, EMR closed, Island, everything is closed, I suppose, and the International Bazaar in ruins. Port Lucaya is a ghost town. Tourists are scarce. Downtown is a dump
unemployment is sky high. Many people have lost their homes. And it says Port Authority laying off, Deepwater Key laid off, Barco laying off, more people than ever apply for social services assistance. Young people can't find a job. Many companies have left, have staff working week on, week off, that kind of thing. I reduce hours, no new investment, but the minister insists Grand Bahama is booming. The person says. So that's a good point to end on tonight, because the folks in the Second City, Freeport, Grand Bahama, and across the country, and even in Africa and all those places, they have big issues, and maybe you'll see the issues come to head sometime.
Yeah, this stuff happening this week.
This week.
This week, Steve,
Mhm.
this is the week.
This is the week.
This is the week.
You know,
All redundant workers,
Mhm.
all dismissed workers, all workers employed or unemployed, we asking them to be there. It's gonna be this week.
Man, okay, that sounds good. That sounds to me like something big happening. And you know, we in press corps, we want to know all of the details. I'll leave it for this week.
This week.
Okay, I can hold on to that. Let's go home, Stevie J. Stephen Jr. Esquire has been the producer extraordinaire here this afternoon with us on Hard Copy. We appreciate him so much. And we want to thank John and everybody else for coming around the table today, because something big is about to happen. Let us thank the folks who made it possible, the People's Movement, Mount Tabor Inspiration, the Ministry of Tourism, Kasika Awards, Hadji's, your everything store, Majority Rule 50th year celebrations, Commonwealth Bank, new debit card, Rocky Farms Nursery, the PLP Empowerment Convention, the Vanya's Spices and Manufacturing Limited, Cool Tech, the Air Can Do experts, Bahamian Brewery and Beverages, Clean Insurance for comprehensive coverage, Super Wash, open 24/7, Bank of the Bahamas, Bank of Solutions, Super Bond, the All Bahamian Supermarkets, the Shore Beach Bistro, Nassau Street, Advantage Insurance and Brokers, 61 Collins Avenue, Ron's Electric Motors, Clarence and Wolf Road Executive Printers, McKinney Media Group, and the Voice of Deliverance, big Monday night revival. The big meeting is happening tonight. Just going to see Apostle Leon Wallace, and he will have a word or two for you. And if he gets wind of what's happening, he says something big is coming down the pipe. And we'll see. Thank you so much. Good night, come on, Coffee Garden. We'll see you tomorrow on the show. We have Aquinas College in the second hour. In the first hour, one Dr. Dwayne Sands. And of course, lots of things happen this week. We've got to pull everything together. So we only get to be able to give an hour here and an hour there to squeeze it all in. Because this week, it's going to be a lot of focus on them PLPs.
You good?